Hey everybody, it's Melissa Terzis, DC Real Estate Mama, bringing you things about Washington, D.C. that are good for kids and doggies. Today we're going to talk about the DC Public School Lottery. That's DCPS, for those of you that didn't know that that's the acronym. So a lot of people who are new to the school system or new to DC say, what is this DCPS lottery thing, and what the hell do you mean my kid can't go to the school that I can see from my front door? So when residents of DC have kids approaching school age, or when people move here from somewhere that isn't DC, the school lottery is more confusing than the samurai Sudoku. We are gonna need some things to help us get through this. Grab one of these. It doesn't have to say Corgi Mom, but it has to be able to hold wine. And then grab one or a bunch of these. Here are the main two things that you need to know. Number one is that your child is not guaranteed a seat in public school anywhere in the city until kindergarten. And number two is that your child is always guaranteed a seat in public school at their in-boundary school from kindergarten through 12th grade. Let's get this going here. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that rules 1 and 2 seem perfectly logical, and why the hell is this idiot even mentioning them? Well, about half the people get stumped on rule number 1. All they hear is DC has free pre-K, and the next thing you know, they've sold their house in Maryland or Virginia, they moved to DC, they dropped their kid off at the front door, and they didn't even bother to turn around. But if they had, they would have seen this on the first day of school. Because that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So DC offers a lot of education options for its residents. There are public schools, charter schools, and then there's also community-based organizations that in some cases are pre-K, they're daycare, but then they also run a pre-K that the school system funds here in DC. So the first place to start is really by going to enrolldcps.dc.gov to find your in-boundary school. Now, if that URL changes, because that tends to happen a lot with DC's websites, and you end up in a vortex of 404 errors, just Google DC school boundaries, and that should bring you to whatever the new URL is that they decide. If you have a child in kindergarten through 12th grade and your plan is to send them to your in-boundary school, great. You're done here. I'll put this wine in a to-go cup. You can take it with you and see yourself out. Anybody who wants to apply for pre-K3, pre-K4, a charter school, or a school that's not their assigned in-boundary school, no matter what grade, you're part of the lottery, so you need this information. And I'm sorry, it's not a fun lottery. There's nothing to scratch off, you're not gonna win money, and there's not little balls that come out of a tube and pop up on the nightly news. So first, let's start with what is pre-K3 and pre-K4. I know this also seems kind of crazy, but I didn't know when I first started with the school system what that meant. So basically, if your child's gonna turn 3 by September 30th, then they are eligible to go into pre-K3. And same thing with 4, if they're gonna turn 4 by September 30th, then they're able to go in for pre-K4. So I honestly had no idea what that meant. So as long as you know those deadlines and the birthday deadlines, you're good. myschooldc.org is home to a lot of info regarding the lottery, and a lot of the info you need is there, as well as the application process when it becomes available. But unfortunately, you have to go through the frequently asked questions, or the FAQs, to get all the information. So if you need to do research on schools, this info is also online, and you'll find it in a bunch of different places. So DCPS's website is dcps.dc.gov. You can go to each school as an individual website. You can go to Great Schools, you can go to School Digger, you can go to local listservs, and you can also go to the DC Urban Mom message board. If you want to hear about that baby genius who's doing calculus in pre-K, and God forbid, could not slum it with your kid who's only reading 1 grade level ahead, then go ahead to Urban Moms and see what you get. If you want just the facts, ma'am, then the school site will give you that. And every single website's gonna have a different flavor, so you have to take it all with a grain of salt. Even the school sites that are just the facts are really only reporting test scores. And if you have a school that what they say teaches to the test, which I didn't understand that either until I had kids in school, then the school may get high marks, but the school experience may not be a great one for your child or for your family. So I'm a real estate agent, and unfortunately I can't discuss schools much beyond location. We're just not allowed. My version of a good school is probably totally different than Mary Poppins' version of a good school, which is also totally different than Joan Crawford's version of a good school. So you see where I'm going with that. The city also offers something called EdFest, Education Fest. That happens at the end of the calendar year, not the school year. So you want to look out for that like November, December timeframe. And that's a really good time to learn more about each school. So here's what you need to know. The priority on which all DCPS lottery decisions are made. The first priority goes to people who live in Boundary who already have a sibling in the school. So if you're trying to get into pre-K3 and you've got an older sibling that's in a higher grade already in the school, you have the best shot of getting in. The next round of people are people who live in Boundary but without a sibling in the school. So let's say you just moved to the neighborhood and you're trying to get your kid into pre-K3 or 4, you would have the next best chance after the families that already have a sibling in an older grade. Now, the third rung here is the child that lives out of Boundary but with a sibling already in that school. So they're prioritized after those who live in Boundary. And then the last priority level is the child who lives out of Boundary without a sibling already in the school. So this means you could have scored a spot for your little one even though you live out of Boundary. But when that younger sister or younger brother comes along, they may not get a spot when it's their turn if there's an in-Boundary student with another sibling in the school that wants that spot. Yeah, I know. So here's something else you need to know. The lottery is unequally equal. What the hell does that mean? It means you're really nothing even when you sort of should be. You may move to a specific neighborhood because you want to be in Boundary for the school that's there, and you may have several children, and you think, all right, my oldest may not get into pre-K because of the way they prioritize the lottery, but the younger siblings have a pretty good chance of getting in. But then, let me tell you what happens. Family who has never been on this continent before moves to your neighborhood from 10,000 miles away. I don't even know if that's a thing. Anyway, they come here for a 1-year job. They fill out the lottery application from their faraway place where they live. They don't need to prove residency until they enroll, so as long as they have a DC address and they can prove their residency by the start of the school year, they're just fine. Their child has just as much of a chance as yours does to that coveted pre-K space. Yes, even if you're born here. Yes, even if you've been paying taxes here for your whole life. Yes, even if you went to that school as a child. Yes, even if you scrimped and saved to buy a house in this neighborhood so that your child could go to the pre-K that's in the neighborhood. DC does not have any system in place to prioritize the children of families who are domiciled here. If you're outraged, I'm right there with you. I'm here because we need more. So, if you think you can dodge this order because you're charming or you know people, take note. The powers that be at DCPS take this lottery very seriously. The lottery is no joke. Chancellors have been fired or forced to resign because of calling in favors to get their own children or children of people who work in the mayor's office ahead of the lottery. You get no preference for applying early. You get no preference for being employed by the school. You get no preference for funding a 3-ring circus outside your school of choice. So let's finish up the lottery. The deadline for high school is the first weekday in February every year, and the deadline for pre-K through 8th grade is March 1st or the first weekday of every year. Results come out around the end of March, but it's also different every year, so it's important to check the deadlines. When you fill out your application, they're going to tell you that you can select up to 12 schools. They explain that it's very important to select them in order of preference. I don't know why we wouldn't know something like this, but they feel compelled to tell us anyway. Once you have matched to a school on your list, everything below your match gets discarded, and everything above, you're automatically added to the wait list for every school that's higher than your match. When you get the results, you usually have until May 1st to accept the spot. Make sure to check the deadline though, because that changes each year as well. If it's not obvious, I'm not gonna lie. I do have a lot of irritation and a lack of confidence in how the schools in DC are run. But what keeps us here is that they're getting better every year, and our school and our parent community is really solid. And I know that that's the case in a lot of neighborhoods in DC. We've been amazingly lucky to have had some awesome teachers for our kids thus far, but it truly does take a village. So please remember that when you get your little one enrolled, you want to get involved with the school, because it's our involvement as parents that helps make the difference for the teachers and helps enable them to do more with our kids, and then helps the schools become better overall. It's DC Real Estate Mama. I'm checking out. My contact info is coming down below. Give me a call or check in with me if you've got any questions about DC Public Schools, how the lottery works, or anything in DC in general about kids and doggies. Thanks.